Hey everybody, I'm Jody Vance.
And I'm George Affleck.
And it is time for
UnSpun Home Edition.
Here we are working from home, George. How's it going for you?
It's not like it was when I was in Palm Springs last time we did this remotely.
No, nor my trip to Maui, my friend. However, I find myself going, well, it could be much, much worse for us.
Yes, it's interesting times, and it's hard to be upbeat, to be honest. But let's try to be positive today and talk about some of the issues and try to find some humor if we could. That would be great.
We're going to do all of that and then some. And most often here on the podcast, what we really try and do is to just inform people. Some people need to tune out of the constant barrage of news. So let's just sort of take people on a journey here of where we're at as of right now. And our right now is always a Thursday morning or Thursday midday, I guess, when we put UnSpun podcast together. So let's start with something that we went back and forth a bit on Twitter. I have to own it. I was wrong.
Yes. So that's about China. Yes.
Explain.
Well, I tweeted an article that came from nature.com, reputable publication, and it talked a lot about what happened in China. And it talked about, obviously we all know in China to a certain degree, and when it was happening back in January, we were all like, oh, come on, this is insane. Why are they, locking down 15 million, 20 million people? Really, is this necessary? But the story, one of the parts of the story that it pulled out, and I pulled the quote out and tweeted it, was that it was within 2 days of the major lockdown, which was around January 25th, that 2 days later, the numbers started reversing, that they started going down as opposed to constantly up. And so I thought that was interesting. It also begs the question, when are we going to peak, and when do we need to be as harsh as they were in China as far as the lockdown, or is a process that we're doing, which is slowly heading that direction, will we have to do the same, or before we see that kind of reversal of the numbers? And that's the ultimate question, right?
I found that article fascinating, and if you want to read it, you're listening right now at George _Affleck on Twitter. Give us a follow there at UnSpun Podcast as well. Because watching things unfold in China as they did, and here on the podcast we mentioned it weekly, I remember saying, wow, they built that huge hospital in 7 days. Like, why did they do that? Some of the draconian things that China put into place to lock down like billions of people, we just wouldn't see some of those atrocities against humans take place in North America, or even in Europe for that matter. But other countries were very severe in their lockdown of COVID-19. South Korea certainly was very, very swift to isolate, to control community transmission, and really test. And South Korea has been able to flatten the curve in a way that Italy, which is now the epicenter, Europe is the epicenter of COVID-19 now, no longer in China. As you mentioned, that shutdown happened at the end of January. We're in the middle of March, and people in China are just starting.
That's right. So that's where you got confused, because your tweet back to me, because it was that, oh, it's 2 months, not 2 days. And you're right. It has been 2 months since, which now they have. Well, they had 0 today, I think was the number that came out today.
Right.
In China.
No new cases.
No new cases, which is a dream scenario, obviously. But that was 2 months since that lockdown happened. And now they're slowly integrating everything back. The market's coming back, the stock market there, all those things. And of course, and so, yeah, so that's a country which has the ability to do full lockdown and create a police state. But, we have done that now in Canada. We have the ability across this country now for authorities to shut things down. But I guess in Singapore and in South Korea, they really were able to, and Denmark has also been very aggressive in their borders closing quick, over 2 weeks ago.
Shout out to Shane Woodford.
Yeah, Shane Woodford, formerly CKNW and K up in Kamloops.
NL Radio.
NL Radio.
Yeah.
He
lives in Denmark.
he lives in Denmark with his wife and kid, and moved there about a year ago. And he's been tweeting all the stuff European. And I lived in Denmark, and so it'll be interesting to see, because we saw from here locally the data and how it works. It takes about 2 weeks to know what decision you made today. You won't see repercussions for 2 weeks because of the whole incubation period. So we'll know when we start, if Denmark starts seeing numbers decline, and right now they're not, because those measures happened about almost 2 weeks ago. They locked the borders. They were the first one to really lock down their borders. And it'll be interesting to see when they get to that 2 week mark, if they start seeing their numbers decline. But as far as Canada, United States, and what we're doing, and then what's horrible is happening in Italy, obviously, and then what's happening in Russia and what's happening in India. These are places that so far have been somewhat immune to it, or that we don't have data for, or the data.
I think it's the latter, George. I think it's the latter. I don't think there's an immune piece. I think there's just a lack of testing, which is what is coming to light, let's say, in the United States right now. I'm hoping that Canada is more South Korea, Denmark than it is Italy or Spain. And it appears that the United States, to this point, have been handling things more as Italy has. And it's tragic to listen. I listened to the daily podcast from St. Patrick's Day on the 17th, and it featured a respiratory physician, head of medicine at one of the hospitals in Italy, and the entire podcast was him explaining what it was like to be there and to be him. And he was actually doing the podcast from his home. He hadn't been home, and I think he said 3 solid weeks he had not been home, where his 3 children and wife are. And he had to make the decision between wearing a mask at home and scaring his children, or taking the mask off at home and just being present after being away for so long. And basically he called it being at war. And he sort of went through his experience. And it terrifies me, honestly, what we're seeing in the United States on Fort Lauderdale beaches, or Clearwater Beach, Florida, which I've heard that today they've now shut that down. But to see that many people thinking that this isn't real, that this isn't actually happening, that self-isolation and social distancing isn't absolutely vital at this particular window. Because if you want to wait till you're sure that this is the right thing to do, it's already too late. That's what the World Health Organization directors have been saying. And
I have 2 adult kids, 23 and 19, almost 19, and they have a challenge with this concept. And and they're working. My daughter is a contractor. She works. She does gigs. She's a gig economy person. So she's continuing to do her gigs. She does some work at CTV, and they're still doing the makeup there, but not for much longer, I'm sure. And they live paycheck to paycheck. My son is 18, 19, and he's sort of, he works at a pet food store, which is obviously being very busy. And so he knows he's putting himself to risk, and he's limiting his time out there, but somebody has to be out there. We still have to have people selling food and getting us those goods and services, but they are definitely putting themselves in a precarious situation. But when you see that kind of youthful arrogance that we saw in Florida, invincibility,
sort of, it's or just the lack of awareness. Because I have great respect for your kids, who, by the way, I don't know well. I think I've said hello. The fact that they're out there and working and keeping the necessities of society going and helping in that way, they're not pulling out the bikini and doing like shotgunning beers on the beach in Florida. Like there's a big difference between the two, because what the people on the beach in Florida don't understand is that their contact with others, and then they go home and they go, "Hi mom, hi dad, hi grandma, hi grandpa," and it can go through their family. Where I believe that the hardworking kids that are still out in the community trying to keep things going here locally do understand that.
This is the ultimate challenge, of course, that we have. Every country has, and every region is we still have to keep, this whole toilet paper wars, and now the liquor wars that are happening. I think that the governments in all these countries are being clear that supply chain management is a priority. That we're not, when we say we're closing our borders, it's not about closing the borders to goods that are required for us to exist. And Toilet paper is pretty much an automated product that's created in a in a factory, and generally
In New Westminster.
New Westminster. I mean, it's the energy is wrongly placed, and then this feeling that it seems like you have the extremes though. You have people who are freaking out, and you have people who are buying toilet paper, and you have these kids on the beach going, yeah, whatever, man. I bought these tickets to the beach to Florida last year, and there's no way anything's going to stop my trip. But then you get
let's
these.
talk about Canadians abroad, though.
Yeah, I was going to say that there's some people trapped.
I just got my parents home. That was stressful. That was stressful because they're 82 and 83.
And where were they?
They were in Palm Springs. They're snowbirds. They were down there. They had just recently been up here to make sure that all their insurance and everything was good. They do that. They come back and forth a couple of times over the fall and winter season. And, there was a little bit of a discussion within our family as to whether they should just stay in place there rather than risk air travel and coming home. And I was of the mindset of, you get your behinds back to Canada. You need to get home. And my stepdad, God bless him, he was like, we are coming home. And they didn't find it difficult. The plane going down to Palm Springs that they got the return of had 6 people on it. And the plane coming back was absolutely jammed.
I mean, that's insane, and obviously not viable for those airlines to continue to do that at all. And so, and of course, what are they charging for those people to give them those planes?
I will tell you, my stepdad getting on that plane, booked it on points, didn't cost him a dime, which really surprised me because Jim Van Horn, my former co-host, actually the person I was working with in Toronto when we survived the SARS epidemic together, just down the street from Scarborough General Hospital, where the super spreader first appeared and started all of the chaos around that epidemic back in 2003. Jim and I worked together. He always vacations in Maui around this time. So there he was on his yearly vacay in Maui and decided to try and come home early. And he got gouged. He just tweeted about it. Air Canada gouged him to come home. He already had a return trip booked. I mean, what are we forgiven here? Like the airlines are saying one thing here, the WestJet saying we're going to suspend commercial air travel to bring Canadians to focus on bringing Canadians back. But are you focusing on bringing Canadians back at an inflated price?
It's hard to say because obviously there's this challenge that people are, trying to even get tickets is tough, but and if you do it online, it's a robot. So, I think the whole system of airline ticketing is a mystery to all of us, I think.
I feel for the Claire Newells of the world. I feel for the travel agents who are frantically trying to help their clients find their way back. I mean, can you imagine being on a cruise ship on the other side of the planet? And then you've got to go to whatever port they take you to. And
I'm trying to think of a place though I wouldn't mind being trapped and staying there.
I've got a friend in Bali. She's okay.
I didn't have a mortgage to pay, and if I was thinking back to my time when I was traveling as my 20s and going, okay, I wouldn't mind being on that beach for 6 months or a year, living on $5 a day. But you don't have access to the medical systems and things that you might need access to. That's always the challenge. But
we need to get people home. I think that's what changed things in my mind anyway. I mean, working in news and you're so connected to it, being a former politician and in the business you do at Curve Communications, crisis management, you're built for this as well. The thing that kind of got me was when Prime Minister Justin Trudeau stepped out, I think I've lost track now. I think it was 4 days ago. And he said, it is time for Canadians to stay home. Yeah. Like when he actually said, stay home, let the kids run around the house.
And as a parent, I'm going, as you are, it's like, I want my kids close because I want to keep don't be across the world. And I can't even imagine what my mom used to worry about me when I was, because, before the internet, I used to write postcards to my mom saying, I'm in this country now. All is well, and here you go. And 2 weeks later, she gets the postcard,
and you'd be somewhere else,
long gone from So now, though, because in real time, where they are, which is great, but also this is, as we have said, it's unprecedented and uncharted territories as this international. Which, by the way, is what's interesting is there's. I haven't heard a lot from the anti-vaxxers lately, and
are they getting a taste of what an unvaccinated world looks like? because that's what this is.
Absolutely. And on the positive side, I haven't heard a lot about terrorism, you know.
No.
And I don't even know what the data is on, you know, gun things in America, but, you know.
I've heard a little bit about that, and it's a bit unnerving, I got to say. Like there are some lineups at the gun shops and people stocking up on ammo. It's like, come on. But can we talk about the United States a little bit?
If you get
like,
crazy on toilet paper, I guess anything's possible, right?
Anything. Yeah, but that just, I mean, when people start to get
scary.
Very, I mean,
that's when maybe government says, okay, you know, there's a store that we need to close down and lock down. Is we don't want a bunch of guns out there. There's people that don't know how to use them, and or they use them the wrong. I mean, I don't even want to imagine that world. There was a break-in last night in London, in I forget which store, one of the main stores. So there is that kind of stuff happening out there, but it seems like most
one of the main big stores, like Harrods or
Suffrages. I don't know. Is that a store? I don't know.
Yeah.
And
that's a great Netflix watch, right? By the way, Mr.
Was,
Selfridge.
What's his face from Ellen?
Mr. Selfridge.
Yes.
Selfridge.
Yeah, I saw a couple of episodes. Anyways, it's
sorry,
so
I digress.
So far though, I feel like people are acting civil. I mean, for the most part, I feel like, you know, even though we have to keep this distance, there is a sort of attitude of, you know, hey, how's it going? And we're this neighborliness. Yesterday, our neighbors, you know, we usually hang out and have a glass of wine. And last night we all did it virtually, even though we live next door to each other. We had a fun little time with our Zoom account, and we're just kind of talking. And literally, we're like, you see each other, and we're getting feedback because we get our Zoom, you know, our audio.
You're too close.
But it was kind of that little nerd fest. But you know, had our wine, and we're trying to be as normal as possible and as neighborly as possible, but keep our distance.
And we're doing huge pots of soup in our house and sharing and freezing them and sharing them around with people. So we don't have to hoard food. We've already, with 2 chefs in the house, we already had a big stock of split peas and dried, and you know, we can make something out of anything. So we're kind of doing that. We're feeling good and feeling stocked up. Not feeling good are people south of the border. When we hear things, did you hear that about the care homes in Florida?
No.
19 care homes in Florida with presumptive positives or confirmed positives. 19. So the one care home in Lynn Valley is responsible for the majority of the deaths in Canada. One.
Yeah.
It just feels as though the wave that's coming south of the border is going to be Italy. Hearing San Francisco on hold in place, like shelter in place, that's a war term. That's like a bomb's coming. Don't move. Don't leave where you are. That happened for San Francisco Bay Area residents. And people are talking about that coming to New York City, Manhattan. People also, I heard Meghan McCain on The View this morning say that the U.S. military is bringing a floating hospital to dock off of Manhattan. Yeah.
Interesting.
Taking some precautions in that way. Yeah. But it's just, I don't feel the leadership, if I may, I don't feel the leadership south of the border that I do here in Canada. I feel that Dr. Teresa Tam,
come on, talk about unspinning something. I mean, give me a break. I mean, you know, we'll get the Trump hate on this one, I'm sure, perhaps. Yeah. But literally, this guy has. There's a number of stories that have shown, you know, the timeline of his comments.
That calendar one.
I know. It's gone from exact reversal, and it's amazing. Like he's just unbelievable that way. This is of the ultimate in examples of how he's able to try and reposition his statements the complete opposite of what he said like a week ago.
Instead of trying to actually save people.
Yeah,
and there are people in the United States working very hard to do that. The frontline healthcare workers across North America deserve all of our support, and people buying the masks to have at home. Stop doing that.
Yeah, we don't need them. We don't need them. I had some really good friends who are like posting pictures on Instagram of, you know, boxes of these N95 or whatever they are, masks, 3M masks. It's like, what? Drop those off at the emergency room. Drop them off at the emergency room. You do not need them in your house in the suburbs. I had a conversation with a connection I have in China. He's at school there in the medical world, and he was saying that in China, and even though it's a communist country, they have a system, and so the company that manufactures the face masks there, obviously they ramped up. They were very strict about face masks in China. You had to wear them all the time, everywhere. It was required. and for everybody. And so the actual cost, he said, went from 10 cents a mask to the peak of the outbreak to about 80 cents wholesale. This is the wholesale cost, from 10 cents to 80 cents. So, you know, obviously opportunistic, but he said that tons of companies have popped up or retooled, and we've heard a lot of that in Canada now about retooling your manufacturing facility potentially if you're on a downswing right now.
Right. Make hand sanitizer. Yeah.
Hand sanitizer, face masks. I tweeted that one actually. A guy in Scotland has a beer company and he's making hand sanitizer. It's quite cool. But
that's awesome.
And so they ramped up. They found a way to make enough masks, but of course there was an opportunity there also to make money, and they did. And now they're down to 40 cents. But you know, and so we're going to be facing that same situation very soon, where we need to find somebody's going to make these masks. We're almost out. But in America, though,
especially for our frontline workers. What were you going to say, America?
No, just like the Trump stuff, and you know, there are a couple of people in his. What's been interesting is he's had some people within his inner circle who've gone against him, and you know, and have proven to be helpful in pushing him, I think, towards making the right decisions.
This morning he put out like this malaria drug is going to be coming immediately, and then the FDA came out and said no. He's
reading tweets about something in India, I think, that I saw about some mixture cocktail they've created. But he has, what I'm going to be interested in is that there's not going to be an election this year. He's going to find a way not to have an election. He has the power to do that given this situation. And there may be a second wave of this virus in the fall. And so I would say that Trump is, as Bill Maher has been saying, he's not going to leave the White House. And this is the perfect tool for him to use to not leave the White House, because he can do it. FDR did it in the Second World War, and he will probably use the same measures to stay in power long enough to maybe potentially turn the tide towards him to beat, it looks like, Biden.
I got to turn my attention back north of the border because that all makes me feel really nauseous. How our health officers here in Canada have been managing this. I was filling in for Charles Adler the other night on the Chorus Radio Network, Coast to Coast, and it was fascinating to hear from the chief medical officers for each province. Sort of, I had the opportunity to glean the clips from all of them, and you know, the debriefs that we get daily that many of us are so locked into, and certainly, as you saw in my column last week, Dr. Bonnie Henry here in British Columbia, and how Adrian Dix has just basically says, hi, I'm the health minister, here's Dr. Bonnie Henry, and we get informed. We know what time of day that's happening. It's consistent, the way it's handled. John Horgan declaring a state of emergency, Premier John Horgan declaring the state of emergency and calling the rest of the school year, the public school system shut down until September. Not all of Canada has done that, but it gives me the feeling that our leaders are trying to be at the forefront of this and not need to be right before they act, but to act on erring on the side of ultimate caution. And I said before on this podcast that Dr. Bonnie Henry has been through this and Ebola and polio in Pakistan and SARS. Like, this is not her first rodeo. So I feel that we are in very good hands in British Columbia in particular, other than the fact that I think that if Washington was south of Gatineau, Quebec, that this border would have been shut down way more quickly after the state of emergency in Washington.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting to see so many politicians united, and to see, and I saw a couple of tweets, I forget who it was, you know, talking about Doug Ford and saying how he's stepped up and doing the right things, saying the right things. We have a few other politicians maybe that aren't.
Can we talk about the should we?
Well, he's been tweeting some weird things, and I think Peter
tone deaf George.
And I think they're still going to have their leadership race, I believe. So, you know, you got to know when to do. I've been quite quiet on Twitter because, you know, my instinct is to be critical on Twitter, and I've been, you know, quiet on that side. And actually, it's funny. I think I saw Stephen Quinn from CBC this morning saying, "Hello, what's happening on Twitter? What's going on? Where is everybody?"
Yeah, I saw that too.
So it's interesting times, but I think in BC specifically, our Bonnie Henry, and I think that the leaders, Wilkinson's been very supportive of the premier publicly.
Yeah, very classy tweet from him today, or was it last night?
Yeah, so
it was a thread last night from Andrew Wilkinson, right?
Yeah, because all we want is calm right now. We need calmness. and all leadership, from all leaders to help us through this. This is not 2 weeks. This is, we're looking at June. As a business owner, I'm strategizing on how I will make it through to June. And then obviously anybody in business, and my business is no different. Mine's maybe less challenged maybe than restaurants and things that have to close. But, you can assume that there's not going to be a lot of new business development over the next few months. And of course, I rely on new business development. So it's definitely a challenging time, but I think we're in it for the long haul. We're looking at 1.5 years before we finally get this thing, under control.
But it'll bring us together. We've gone viral in Britain. We have to come up with another term for going viral. Yeah, that's... Canada has become famous in a great way for using kindness and taking care of our neighbors, putting that at the forefront during this pandemic. Globally, we are being acknowledged for how we are coming together as a nation, and I think that is something that is worthy mentioning here.
Absolutely, and I think that we have to keep that positive attitude. Try to stay focused on all of us working together on this. Stay connected to your neighbors. Don't go to gun shops, please.
No.
Don't raid.
Don't hoard toilet paper.
Don't hoard toilet paper. Don't hoard anything.
Can we actually talk about that real quick? Because I did speak to somebody with regard to food security with like the retailers of Canada and how and why the shelves are empty. The shelves are empty because grocery stores stock their shelves based on our society's typical buying habits.
Right.
Around holiday time, there are more foods that are associated with those holidays. They anticipate these needs.
Yeah.
That you go to Costco at a certain time of year and it's garden hoses and fertilizers, and you go at another time of year and it's snow shovels and salt. So if your Safeway or if your Loblaws or if your wherever you shop is empty or depleted, it's because people are buying twice as much as they typically do. And if everybody just calmed down and bought what they need, what we really need, there would be enough. There is going to be enough. What we don't have are the human beings that can stock those shelves fast enough. And I heard Doug Ford this morning in Ontario, and I believe it's going to happen across the country, is one of the reasons why these shelves are not stocked quickly enough is because there are noise restrictions as to when the trucks can deliver the goods from the warehouses to the grocery stores. So in Ontario, they just lifted all restrictions on delivery times. So if you hear big trucks rolling around your neighborhood on a Sunday morning at 7, don't complain.
No.
Don't complain.
Yeah, I think that, and speaking of hoses and toilet paper, there's, one can ultimately replace the other.
You and your bidet. You're just going to bring it up every time.
I'm just saying, when I was in Egypt, there was a hole in the ground for the toilet, and there was a hose right into that hole, and you just lift that hose up. Right in there. Just give it a squirt.
Okay, gross. Can I tell you about my middle this week? Because I struggled with what I wanted to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
I'm blessed with some great friends, man. I've got good friends, and I have a lot of people who reach out to me on Twitter. My Twitter DMs are open. Some people think I'm crazy to do that, but I've talked to a lot of people that just needed somebody to talk to. And they remain open, by the way. If you want to talk to me, send me a note. But I recognize that people are dealing with the anxiety around COVID-19, the coronavirus, the pandemic, whatever you want to call it. People all deal with it differently. Some need to talk it through like it's end of days. Some need to make jokes about it and funnies, and other people might just need a shoulder to cry on for a sec, or we're going to be okay. Like, talk through the positivity of it. Whatever it is that you need, do that. And if you need to speak with somebody, reach out to somebody. There are a lot of people who are not used to being the one that's anxious, right? Like the strong stalwarts of our society are also feeling anxious here.
Yeah, 100%. I think that there's, and you know what? A lot of us are at home looking for things to do. Not that I am, but I'm thinking it's a different lifestyle now, and going out for whatever is not happening. So those dinner things you used to go to, now you can just connect with your friends online and talk about their feelings.
Right. But if your friend really needs to be like, it's end of days, listen to them, let them get it all out, let them be mad at it, and then say, you know what, I'm here for you.
Yeah.
I'm not going to let you fall. Like that's kind of, it's what I'm holding on to. It's hard. This is scary, but we're going to get through it.
Yes, we know we will get through this because we have the proof
people,
in China. They're through it. And so we
people
just
need to hear you,
have to
George.
know that this has an end, and it's not going to be, predictable for the next while. And it has scare, but know that this is, there is a beginning, middle, and end to this. And we just need to get there. And that's the hard part, but we can do it.
On that note,
Me being all
that's
positive.
Unspun.
Yeah. Bye.